lecture on Chapter 1 from Gardner's Art Through the Ages, A Concise Global History, covering prehistory and the first civilizations, and I'm Julia Schlosser. All right, so we're covering prehistory and the first civilizations, and this is a very brief overview of the civilizations we will cover in this chapter. We're going to start with the Stone Age, and this goes from 40,000 to 3500 BCE, divided in, we're going to look at two ages, the Paleolithic, the Old Stone Age from 40,000 to 9,000 BCE. Humans create the first sculptures and paintings. The works range in scale from tiny figurines to life-size paintings on cave walls. And then second, we're going to look at the Neolithic. So in the Neolithic Age, which goes from 8,000 to 3,500 BCE, the first settled communities appear in Anatolia and Mesopotamia, and artists produce the first large-scale sculptures and the earliest paintings with coherent narratives. In other words, that tell stories that we can understand. All right, so we're going to start with Sumer, Akkad, and the Old Kingdom of Egypt. And this time period goes from 3500 BCE to 2150 BCE. The Sumerians, so going from 3500 to 2332 BCE, established the first city-states. They construct temples on lofty mud brick platforms, and they adopt the register format for narrative art. The Akkadians, from 2332 to 2150 BCE, produced the earliest known life-size hollow cast metal sculptures, and the Old Kingdom in Egypt from 2575 to 2134 BCE. These Egyptian sculptures create statuary types expressing the eternal nature of divine kingship, the importance of the king, and the fourth dynasty kings build three colossal pyramids at Giza. Babylonia and the New Kingdom, so during the time period from 2150 to 1070 BCE, Hammurabi, the greatest Babylonian king, and now he reigns from 1792 to 1750 BCE, and he sets up a stele recording his comprehensive laws. So this is a tablet in which his laws are all written down. And you can tell that we have very specific dates, 1792 to 1750, because these dates are written on these tablets and we can read them. So we've gone from the period of prehistory before writing, and now we're in the period where we can read what was left by these civilizations, the writing that they left. Egyptian New Kingdom, so that's from 1550 to 1070 BCE. These architects construct grandiose pylon temples, and the ruler, the pharaoh Akhenaten, introduces a new religion and new art forms. Then we're going to cover a little bit of Assyria and Achaemenid Persia, and this is from 900 to 330 BCE. So the Assyrians, between 900 and 612 BCE, construct fortified citadels guarded by Lamassu, and these are these beautiful, huge, human-headed, eagle-winged bull sculptures. They're massive and dramatic, and they carve large-scale reliefs celebrating their prowess in warfare and hunting. So we can tell what's important to a civilization by the pictures that they're leaving us. The Achaemenid Persians from 550 BCE to 330 BCE build an immense palace complex at Persepolis, featuring an audience hall that could accommodate 10,000 guests. Now, this might seem a little small in comparison to our, SoFi Stadium or something, but if you think about a hall where 10,000 people could sit and listen to the king, that's pretty big by any standards. All right, so this first chapter covers a long time period from 40,000 BCE to 330 BCE. And we're going to start with prehistory. Humankind originated in Africa in the very remote past. Yet it was not until millions of years later that ancient hunters began to represent, and again, this word literally means to present again in a different or substitute form, the world around them, and to fashion the first examples of what people generally call art. So they're representing what they see around them. The immensity of this intellectual achievement cannot be exaggerated. This is a big deal when people started to make art. All right, so the Paleolithic Age. The earliest preserved art objects date to around 40,000 to 30,000 BCE. And this is during the Old Stone Age, or what they call the Paleolithic period. Paleolithic artworks are astonishingly varied. They range from simple shell necklaces to human and animal forms in ivory, clay, and stone, to life-size paintings, engravings, and relief sculptures covering the walls and ceilings of caves. So the Paleolithic, the time period is from about 30,000 to 9,000 BCE. The place that we're looking at is Western Europe, and the people are mostly nomads, so they move around, and they're hunter-gatherers. As they move, they hunt animals, and they gather. They find, things from the forest. So that's what kind of civilization they were. And one of the first images that we're going to look at is from the Paleolithic period, and this is a nude woman called the Venus of Willendorf. Now, you can see that this is just a nickname, right? Because the word Venus comes from the ancient Greek, which is not going to happen until a long time after this. And Willendorf is the name of the place in Austria where they found this little tiny sculpture. So again, some people don't like to call it the Venus of Willendorf because it's kind of an inaccurate term, and they just call it the nude woman. So this is, we have a range of about 3,000 years. We think it could have been made anywhere in between 28,000 and 25,000 BCE. And it's carved out of limestone, and it's about 4.5 inches high, so this is very small. It could fit in the palm of your hand. All right, the Venus of Willendorf, one of the oldest sculptures discovered to date, carved using simple stone tools, is the tiny limestone figurine of a woman nicknamed the Venus of Willendorf after its find spot, or the place they found it, in Austria. Art historians can only speculate on the function and meaning of this or similar objects because they date to a time before writing, before or prehistory. And so you're going to see throughout our, time, people have come up with, we think it meant this, or we think it did that. And then the next generation of art historians come up with a different theory. We don't know because there is no writing. There's no way that we can know what this object was really used for. So we can only speculate. We can only guess. Well, informed guesses, I guess. Yet the preponderance of female over male figures in the art of the Old Stone Age seems to indicate a preoccupation with women whose childbearing capabilities ensured the survival of the species. The anatomical exaggeration of the Willendorf figurine has suggested to many scholars that this and other prehistoric statuettes of women served as fertility images. The breasts of the Willendorf woman are enormous, far larger in proportion than the tiny forearms and hands resting on them. In addition to using a stone chisel, the sculptor also used a burin, so a little tool, to incise or scratch into the stone the outline of the pubic triangle. Sculptors often omitted this detail in other Paleolithic female figurines, however, and many of the women also have far more slender proportions than the Willendorf woman, leading some scholars to question the nature of these figures as fertility images. So maybe they are, maybe they aren't, we don't know. In any case, it seems clear that the maker's intent was not to represent a specific woman, but the female form. So this isn't a portrait of a particular woman, this is just more about the female form. And so there she is. So it's portable. If you're a nomadic culture or you're moving from place to place, you need art objects that are small enough to carry with you. It probably has to do with fertility and the idea of survival, and then the exaggeration of the features of her body. All right, and the word find spot means the place where the artifact was found. Again, Paleolithic, 30,000 to 9,000 BCE, Western Europe, people, nomads, and hunter-gatherers. Okay, we're moving on to 2 bison, and these are reliefs in the cave at Les Tucs d'Audebert from France, and these are estimated to be from about 15,000 to 10,000 BCE, and the right bison is almost 3 feet long, so much larger than the tiny Willendorf nude that we just looked at, and also these are in a particular location so that people would have to be able to come back to them. They couldn't carry these with them. All right, Les Tucs d'Audebert, far more common than Paleolithic representations of humans, are sculptures and paintings of animals. An early example of animal sculpture is the pair of clay bison reliefs in the cave at Les Tucs d'Audebert from France. The sculptor modeled the forms by pressing the clay against the surface of a large boulder at the back of a cave. And after using both hands to form the overall shape of the animal, the artist smoothed the surfaces with a tool, like a spatula, and used fingers to shape the eyes, nostrils, mouths, and manes of the bison. All right, and so the question is, what subject would these early artists portray, and how would they portray it? Animals are far more common subjects in Paleolithic art than are humans. In both relief sculptures and paintings, animals always appear in profile. So this is the only view that is completely informative about their shape. The profile is the only view of an animal in which the head, body, tail, and all 4 legs are visible. The frontal view conceals most of the body, and a 3/4 view shows neither the front nor the side fully. So only the profile view is completely informative about the animal's shape, and that is why Paleolithic painters and relief sculptors universally chose it. The bison of Les Tucs d'Audebert are among the largest sculptures of the Paleolithic period, but they are dwarfed by these so-called herds of painted animals that roamed the cave walls of southern France and northern Spain. Examples of Paleolithic painting have now been found in more than 200 European sites. Nonetheless, archaeologists still regard these as rare occurrences, because even though there's 200 or more of these cave paintings, prehistoric artists created them over the period of 10 to 20,000 years. So again, it's not very often that they're painting these. Paleolithic painters drew their subjects using chunks of red and yellow ochre. So these are kind of like minerals that have color. For painting, they ground these ochres into powders, and then they mix them with water before painting them on the cave walls. And these large flat stones served as palettes, so it allowed them a surface to grind the pigment and then mix it with water and then to paint from there. They made brushes from reeds, bristles, or twigs, and they may have used a blowpipe like a reed or a hollow bone to spray pigments on surfaces that were too far away for them to reach. Some of the caves have natural ledges on the rock walls on which the painters could have stood in order to reach the upper surfaces of the naturally formed chambers and corridors. So they didn't have ladders or anything like that, but they could climb up on the rocks and then paint higher up. To illuminate their work, the painters used stone lamps filled with marrow or fat from animal bodies and perhaps with a wick of moss. So again, if in a cave, if you move away from the entrance, you quickly lose the light. It becomes very dark. And these cave painters couldn't just pull out their iPhones, right, and turn on the flashlight. They had to have some way to see where they were going and also the walls as they were painting. Despite the difficulty of making the tools and pigments, modern attempts at replicating the techniques of the Paleolithic painting have demonstrated that skilled workers could cover large surfaces with images in less than a day. So once these guys got, well, I'm saying guys, maybe they were women, but we don't know. Once they got good at painting, they could move pretty quickly to paint. All right, so again, the themes that we're looking at are survival, fertility, and animals. And the forms that they're making art in are anatomical exaggeration, so like the large breasts of the Willendorf figurine. Pictorial definition. The aims of the earliest artists was to create a convincing image of their subject, a kind of pictorial definition of the animal capturing its very essence, and only the profile view met their needs. And we're going to think about this idea of twisted perspective, or a composite view, because the viewers see the heads in profile, but the horns from the front. Thus, the painter's approach is not consistently optical. They're not seen from a fixed viewpoint. It's kind of like the Cubist artists who are moving around when they're looking. Rather, the approach is descriptive of the fact that cattle have two horns. Two horns are part of the concept of bull. In strict profile, only one horn would be visible. So if you're looking at an animal from the side, you only see one horn. But if you notice on these cave walls, it shows two horns. So they had a kind of a twisted perspective. All right, and so here you can see that the animal is in a side view, profile view, all four legs, side of its head, but oh, look, we see both of the horns. So this is what they mean by the twisted perspective. And here you can see the animal is painted with an outline, and then here some of the animals are actually, the outlines are filled in. The largest of these bulls is 11 feet 6 inches long, so almost 12 feet long. And so that's huge compared to the tiny Venus of Willendorf figure, which is only 4 inches. All right, the best known Paleolithic cave is that at Lascaux near Montignac, France, which features a large circular gallery called the Hall of the Bulls. Not all of the painted animals are bulls, despite our nickname for it. Some of the animals, such as the great bull at the right, were represented using outline alone, but others are colored in. And so this is the way we learn to draw, right, from kindergarten, and that's the way they draw. These are two basic approaches to drawing and painting in the history of art. And again, here's one of the bulls who's painted in outline form. And then some of these others, this might be a horse, is painted in, it actually has shading on the inside of its body. So it's painted. All right, here they appear side by side, suggesting that different artists painted the animals at various times. The impression that a modern viewer gets of a rapidly moving herd is therefore almost certainly false. When we look at this, we see kind of like a herd of animals, but it's much more likely that these animals were painted one at a time by different people over periods of time, and that the appearance of the herd kind of evolved as they kept adding more and more animals to the blank spots. The herd consists of several different species of animals, right, of disparate sizes. So these animals are different sizes, they're moving in different directions, and they're in fact different types of animals. So they aren't really a herd like we would think about it. Although most share a common ground line, some, for example, those in the upper right-hand corner, seem to float above the viewer's head, like clouds in the sky. The painting has no setting, no background, no indication of place, nothing about landscape or trees or anything like that. The sole concern was representing the animals, not locating them in a specific place. All right, and here is another one of the more unusual kind of drawings. So there's a rhinoceros, there's a wounded man, and there's a disemboweled, oh, I'm sorry, the rhinoceros is over here, wounded man with the head of a bird, and then a disemboweled bison, a bison that had been started to be butchered. And again, 16,000 to 14,000 BCE, and the bison is about 4.5 feet long. All right, so there's the rhinoceros, the wounded man, and the disemboweled bison. Perhaps the most perplexing painting in any Paleolithic cave is the mural deep in the well shaft at Lascaux, where man, as opposed to women, makes one of his earliest appearances in the history of art. So this is important because this is one of the first times that we know of that a man was painted as opposed to a woman. At the left and moving to the left is a rhinoceros. Beneath its tail are 2 rows of 3 dots of uncertain significance. We don't know what they mean. At the right is a bison with less realistic proportions. Probably somebody else painted that. And the second painter nonetheless successfully suggests the bristling range of the animals, whose bowels hang from its belly in a heavy coil, so this animal has been wounded. Between the 2 beasts is a bird-faced or perhaps a masked man with outstretched hands, arms and hands having only 4 fingers. So we really don't know what this means. All right, so again, the themes are survival, fertility, animals, and anatomical exaggeration, pictorial definition, and don't forget that twisted perspective. All right, so let's move on to the Neolithic period. The themes here are human activity, so we're going to see a change, building for community, and the forms are going to be a composite view, mud, brick, and stone construction, post and lintel, and monumental sculpture. So things are going to be shaken up a little bit in the Neolithic period. Around 9000 BCE, the ice covering much of northern Europe during the Paleolithic period melted as the climate warmed, and the sea level rose more than 300 feet. So this now separates England from continental Europe and Spain from Africa. And the Paleolithic Age gives way to a transitional period called the Mesolithic or the Middle Stone Age. And then for several thousand years at different times in different parts of the globe, a great new age called the Neolithic or the New Stone Age dawned. Humans began to domesticate plants and animals and settle in fixed abodes. So they no longer were on the move. They started to make small cities, and they lived in houses that stayed in one place. Their food supply assured, so now that they started to plant crops and domesticate animals, many groups changed from hunters to herders to farmers and finally to townspeople. Wandering hunters settled down to organize community living in villages surrounded by cultivated fields. In addition to agriculture, these Neolithic societies originated weaving, metalworking, pottery, and counting and recording with tokens, and constructed religious shrines as well as homes. All right, so we're going to talk about Çatalhöyük, and this is a Neolithic settlement at Çatalhöyük on the central Anatolian plateau, or where we think of Turkey, flourished between 6500 and 5700 BCE and was one of the world's first experiments in urban living. The regularity of the town's plan suggests that the inhabitants built the settlement to some predetermined scheme. In other words, somebody thought of the way that they wanted this to look or the way that they wanted the town to be laid out, and then they built it according to that plan, rather than just people coming and putting up a house wherever they wanted to. The houses were constructed of mud brick, strengthened by sturdy timber frames, and they varied in size, but they repeated the same basic plan. So a house might be bigger or smaller, but they all had the same kind of basic plan. The rooms have plastered and painted floors and walls, with platforms along the walls that served as sites for sleeping, working, and eating. And the living buried the dead beneath the floors. All right, and so here is a picture of a deer hunt, and this is a detail of a wall painting from Çatalhöyük from Turkey, and this is from around 5750 BCE. And so you can see people here, and again we're going to see that kind of that twisted perspective where the body is in profile, but the head is not. In other words, the body's moving in 2 different directions. All right, Çatalhöyük, the excavators have found many rooms decorated with mural paintings and plaster reliefs. And these shrines had an uncertain function, but their number indicates that the rooms played an important role in the life of the Neolithic settlement. On the wall of one room, archaeologists discovered a painted representation of a deer hunt, and the mural is worlds apart from the cave paintings that the hunters of the Paleolithic period produced. So, all right, perhaps what is most strikingly new about the Çatalhöyük painting and similar Neolithic examples is the regular appearance of the human figure. Not only singly, so not only a single human, but also in large, coherent groups with a wide variety of poses, subjects, and settings. So they up their game. As noted earlier, humans rarely figured in Paleolithic paintings, and pictorial narratives are almost unknown. So they're not telling stories in the Paleolithic period in the same way that they are in the Neolithic. Even the Lascaux hunting scene is doubtful as a narrative. We don't know, but we don't think it really tells a story. In Neolithic art, scenes with humans dominating animals are central subjects. Perhaps what is most strikingly new about the Çatalhöyük painting and similar Neolithic examples is the regular appearance of the human figure. Guys, I think I repeated this slide. Sorry. Okay, here we go. And here's the deer hunt, and this is the detail of a wall painting. In the Çatalhöyük hunt, the group of hunters is a rhythmic repetition of basic shapes, but the painter took care to distinguish important descriptive details. So we can see bows and arrows, garments. The heads have noses, mouths, chin, and hair. The Neolithic painter placed all the heads in profile for the same reason that Paleolithic painters universally chose the profile view for representations of animals. Only the side view of the human head shows all its shapes clearly. And the painter presented the torsos from the front, so again, the most informative viewpoint, whereas the profile view was the choice for the legs and arms. So this composite view of the human body is as artificial as these twisted horns of the Lascaux bulls, because the human body really can't make this 90-degree shift at the hips. But it well describes the parts of the human body. So it's showing us different aspects of the body, but not from a particular or a fixed viewpoint. The technique of painting also changed dramatically from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic Age. They used brushes to apply their pigments to a background of dry white plaster. And again, remember, these are no longer in caves. The careful preparation of the wall surface is a striking contrast to the direct application of pigments to the irregularly shaped walls and ceilings of the old Stone Age caves. So in the caves, they had the wall of the cave and they just painted straight on it. In the Neolithic period, they're actually preparing the wall. They're putting down this dry white plaster to make a ground, and then they're painting on top of that. So this is another big change from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic period. All right, so the technique of painting also changed dramatically. They used brushes. They applied it to this dry white plaster, and you can see here another thing that they found. So this is in another Neolithic village called Ain Ghazal. Archaeologists have uncovered dozens of large white plaster Neolithic statuettes with these detail added in paint and shell, so you can see the shell of the eyes. And these are the start of large-scale sculpture in the history of art. Again, from about 6500 BCE. And this was from this village, this very old village in Jordan. Again, so the hallmarks of the Neolithic period are monumental sculpture, plaster, reeds, and twine. They were ritually buried. These sculptures were buried, and they were in a planned town. So this, much different. All right, so let's move on to Stonehenge, and this is from England, and this is from about 2550 to 1600 BCE. Stonehenge. So in Western Europe, where Paleolithic paintings and sculptures abound, no comparatively developed towns around, from the same time as Çatalhöyük or Angazal have been found. However, what we have in place of that, perhaps as early as 4000 BCE, the local Neolithic populations in several areas developed this monumental architecture employing massive rough-cut stones. So you can see in different areas of the globe, different types of architecture are going to be seen. The varied dimensions of the stones, some are as tall as 24 feet, so that's about 2.5 stories. They weigh as much as 50 tons, and some historians call them megaliths, or great stones, and they designate the culture that produced them megalithic. Although megalithic monuments are plentiful throughout Europe, the arrangements of huge stones in a circle, and you're going to remember that this is called a henge, the arrangement of huge stones in a circle, called a henge, often surrounded by a ditch, is almost entirely limited to Britain. So these are from Britain. The most imposing example is Stonehenge near Salisbury, and so this is a complex of rough cut sarsen, so this is a form of sandstone, and smaller bluestone, so these are volcanic rock. These are built in several stages, and it took them hundreds of years to build this Stonehenge. In the final form, Stonehenge consists of an outermost ring, so it's 97 feet in diameter, of these 24-foot tall sarsen monoliths. So these are one-piece pillars supporting lintels, which are horizontal stone blocks used to span an opening. And so you can see them, the lintel and then the two stones holding it. One of the earliest examples of monumental stone architecture in Neolithic Europe, this is the circle of 24-foot tall trilithons at Stonehenge, probably functioned as an astronomical observatory or a solar calendar. And okay, and the trilithons just mean 3 rocks, right? 1, 2, 3. The simple post and lintel system of construction, still in use today. Inside is a ring of bluestone, so that's that volcanic rock, which in turn encircles a horseshoe, which has the opening end facing east of trilithons, and these are 5 lentil-topped pairs of the largest sarsens, so these huge rocks, each weighing 45 to 50 tons. This is why people say the aliens built this. Standing apart and to the east is a heelstone, which for a person looking outward from the center of the complex would have marked the point where the sun rose at the summer solstice. So this is all about the sun rising and setting and trying to come up with a system to predict this or to kind of point at this. Perhaps it was originally a burial site. Stonehenge in its latest phase seems to have been a kind of astronomical observatory and a remarkably accurate solar calendar that may have also served as a center of healing, attracting the sick and dying from throughout the region. Whatever functions Stonehenge served in Neolithic Britain, it is an enduring testament to the rapidly developing intellectual powers of humans, as well as to their capacity for heroic physical efforts. All right, so again, the Neolithic is going from about 9,000 to 2000 BCE, Western Europe and the Near East, and the people settled in villages, they became farmers, and they developed complex rituals. And again, this is Stonehenge. This is an example of this post and lintel construction. So you can see the 2 posts and then the lintel across the top. It's monumental architecture. These refer to them as these megaliths, and they think it was for astronomical observing the movement of the sun and the stars. And you can see, all the different, the outside ring and then the inside a horseshoe.